How will Xbox handle this disaster? That could be anything. That could be like the outage, anything. What is up, y'all, and welcome to Xbox. Every time I open up a video with Jim, it's like, Xbox sucks.
Oh my god. Sony had a rough week too, dude. Their newest update, so, you know, like when you put a disc in your PS5 and you hover over the game, it like puts a background up from the game and plays music from it. There's just fucking ads, and then they were like, oh, it's a technical error. It's like, yeah, fucking right, dude. You did that on purpose with the welcome hub just to like see if you could swing one by people, and obviously everyone got mad. They're like, oh, it's a technical. You know it wasn't a technical error because they actually said something about it.
As you can tell, we have Jimmy back on the show for this edition of Xbox Ready, the YouTube channel that is all about Xbox. And I posed that question at the beginning. I'm specifically referring to this interview that Jason Schreier just did. He is a reporter for Bloomberg.
He's always like going off. He's always got these like one-liner things that he knows will get picked up by Twitter, and he knows what he's doing.
In fact, he has so much insider knowledge about Xbox and their studios, especially Blizzard and Bethesda, that he wrote a whole book about it.
His books are interesting. Yeah, I read his last one. It was good. It had a lot of stuff from Destiny in it, like how up the development of that game was. Like, if you want to see like games that came out and were decent, but like you heard before that the development process was terrible, his book will have that story, and it's always really detailed. I really liked his first book.
So yeah, he was on this podcast talking about Tokyo Game Show when he made these remarks about Xbox. Xbox is a disaster. They don't really know what's going on over there. Their goals are changing every year. At one point, they're saying, yeah, we'll never put Indiana Jones on PS5. And then the next breath, they turn around and do just that. So Jim, is Xbox a disaster? Disaster is a strong word. I mean, like Red Ring of Death, that was a disaster. Like, my Xbox doesn't work anymore. Are you kidding me? This sucks. And what Xbox is doing now, I would say is confusing. I would say like, okay, yeah, some things are clearly changing over at Xbox, but to call it a disaster, I don't think we're there yet.
I don't either. And I also think the whole games industry is a disaster. So like, you've got this stuff with the Xbox going on that Ray has talked about at like extents. And then you've got PlayStation with this update that they put out, added in those ads we just talked about, but it also completely broke Final Fantasy 16. PlayStation Network went down on Monday for 8 hours. They didn't say anything about it. Ubisoft is like at the brink of being closed down because of Assassin's Creed Shadows pre-orders. I mean, that letter they put out where they're like, wow, putting out games 80% done doesn't generate sales. We're going to change the way we make games. It's like, what? Like, can you imagine if you went and saw like Scream 6? I don't know. I can't think of a movie, and like it had the gray box because the CGI wasn't done. And they were like, well, if you come back in 2 weeks, we'll have the finished movie ready to show off. People would be like, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? But in gaming, we're just expected to be like, yeah, if I buy this game at launch, the developers will get the money, and then I'll just put it on my shelf for 3 months while they finish it. Yeah, so like the whole industry is a disaster right now. And then Sony, they've got like all of their first party studios are 5 to 7 years into development on a first party game, and the only one we know about is Ghost of Yotei, which looked the exact same as Ghost of Tsushima graphically speaking. Something weird's going on, man. Like, you know, there's this thing that Rainbow Six Siege did where they canceled a season and called it Operation Health. And instead of making new content, they rebuilt the netcode for the game from the ground up and like fixed a bunch of bugs. We need that for the entire games industry. Like, take a year off, let everyone get through their backlogs, and then just fix all your shit. And then get back to making games, because it's like all about to fall over. It feels like everything is standing on a toothpick right now, and it's like one catastrophic disaster away from just being an implosion of the industry.
I know people are going to get on Jason Schreier because, well, people were pointing it out to me when I was taking issue with Indiana Jones being on PS5. Technically, they never said no to Indiana Jones being on PS5. If you go back to that Xbox podcast business update that they did, Tina Amini goes,
so these 4 titles, what are they? Can you say? I'm not going to name those games. The teams that are building those games have announced plans that are not too far away.
Can we say if either of those titles are Starfield or Indiana Jones?
They are not Starfield or Indiana Jones.
Doesn't mean that they said, no, never Indiana Jones on PS5. They were just kind of being vague and cute about it.
Which they should stop doing. We've talked about that a lot. Like, their problems are self-created. If they were just upfront and honest and said, we're looking at it, we're going to see how these perform, and then we might port it. Right now, we're leaning towards yes. There you go. That would have solved the entire problem. We wouldn't have to make a video about it, you know?
A lot of people point to the acquisition of Activision Blizzard as the turning point that changed everything. And I do agree, like, yes, you can kind of see the trajectory of buying Activision Blizzard, raising the price of Game Pass to compensate for putting Call of Duty on there. Sure, there's like a domino effect after they made the buyout, but it also seems that specifically with their exclusives, it changed once they got Activision Blizzard. I think if they could, they would have made Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox, but that wasn't going to happen.
Right, because they're not spending their money. They're spending Microsoft's money. Like, they're taking money from other divisions of Microsoft, right? Like the cloud or like the AI division or other hardware like Surface. They're pooling together resources that Microsoft has and spending it. So they got to remake that. But if it was like a situation where Xbox was a standalone company and spent a big chunk of their money doing Call of Duty acquisition stuff, they probably would be able to keep it exclusive. But I feel like they asked for too much from Microsoft, and now Microsoft is like, hey, you're going to pay any of that back eventually?
And they're in this position where it's like, oh, well, most of our biggest franchises are multi-platform. Minecraft, Call of Duty, the former Bethesda games like Fallout and The Elder Scrolls. And so now it's this question of like, well, if those are multi-platform and that's what's making us the most money, why should we keep this other stuff? Why not make a PlayStation 5 version of Indiana Jones? Why not make a PS5 version of Doom? And that criteria, and they come out and say the same thing every time. They're like, we want more people to experience this game. Well, that can be applied to any of their franchises. That's why when people sit and they're like, they would never do Halo, they would never do Gears. It's like, why not? Especially if Microsoft is the one making the call, then why not? And people don't like when I say stuff like that because it's like, oh, it's just fear mongering, it's just this, it's just that. I'm just looking at what they are doing. Like,
it's not fear mongering. Like, they're doing it. And the funny thing is, you could change that sentence around and say, we want more people to experience this game, and to do that, they should buy an Xbox. There you go. Like, have some confidence, dude. Like, you have these games, and I understand that you have to make the money back from Microsoft, but...
So while I don't agree with Jason that Xbox is a disaster, I do agree with the fact that, like, it seems that their messaging is changing a lot. You go back to 2021, that 20th anniversary where they won Publisher of the Year. There was no inkling that they were going to, put Sea of Thieves on PlayStation 5 or make any of these exclusive games that they were coming out with multi-platform. Or maybe they did, because Psychonauts 2 was multi-platform that year, and that was kind of coming out in the middle of Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5. So I don't know, maybe there was an inkling, but as someone who follows Xbox very, very closely, it does seem that things change a lot in terms of their messaging, in terms of their goals. We know that Starfield at one point had a PlayStation 5 version. Bethesda was planning on releasing this game multi-platform like they've done with all of their other games in the past. But after Microsoft acquired them, they canceled the PlayStation 5 version. They quadrupled down on the fact that Starfield was going to be exclusive to the Xbox platform. And before the game released, they were like, oh yeah, it saved us a bunch of time being exclusive. If we had to do a PlayStation 5 version, we wouldn't be able to ship it nearly as soon as we wanted to. Oh yeah, when you think about Legend of Zelda, you think Nintendo and vice versa, and that's how it's gonna be for Starfield. Starfield being an Xbox exclusive is awesome. Fast forward just a year later, a little bit more than a year after the release of Starfield, their entire tune has changed. All of that stuff about Starfield how it's a good thing it was exclusive to Xbox, no longer apply to games like Indiana Jones or Doom or any other game they're planning on shipping to other platforms. Now it's all, no, we want a wider reach. No, we want more people to experience this amazing game that we're working on. But I don't know, it seems like they're interested in doing better, because we are also hearing that Xbox is reaching out to developers. The research arm of Xbox, the Microsoft Gaming Division, is reaching out to developers and asking them, hey, why are you skipping over our platform? What are some things that we can do to improve to make our platform appealing to put your game on it? Maybe they'll get some good feedback, sure. And it doesn't hurt to ask, because every other day we hear a story about like, oh, this game skipped over Xbox, and it's some game that I don't give a damn about.
Yeah, usually is.
Usually is. I mean, there's some exceptions, right? Like Black Myth would love to see that on Xbox. When Baldur's Gate 3 was delayed, I would have, I felt a certain type of way about that, but it eventually came over. What can they truly do about that?
I don't know, because the answer is obvious. I mean, they trained their audience to not buy games, right? Like they said, hey, everything's going to be on Game Pass. Get used to paying a subscription fee to get your games for free. And then when people release their games outside of Game Pass, I mean, look at Twitter. Whenever a new game is announced, it's like Game Pass when, Game Pass when, Game Pass when. We talked about this last week with Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters. That ended up at like 57th on the Xbox store, I want to say. And like, yeah, it's an old game and it's like a niche audience, I would say. But people don't show up to buy games, right? Like, you got to buy games to make games want to be on that platform. No one wants to get a lump sum and then have their game on a subscription service, because they usually get that money while they're making the game. And you need to make money after you're done making the game to actually have money to make more games, you know? It's like, I don't know how they didn't foresee this.
Hold up. I don't think that's fair. Mostly because, yes, it is cool that they ported over Pixel Remasters. Whoopee signals a great start to the Square Enix relationship, signals things to come. But there's no universe, no platform, whether it's Xbox or any other system, where Pixel Remasters are going to be just a top tier, off the chart selling game. Sure, it didn't crack the top 50 or whatever in most played games when it released. But was it ever supposed to? Did we expect it to? Also, I can only speak to my own personal gaming habits, but I don't get this thing of, oh, Xbox dudes only play their games through Game Pass. Sure, I play a lot of games through Game Pass. If it's on Game Pass, I'll give it a try. If I really like it, I'll buy it. And if it's not on Game Pass, like Space Marine 2, I'll buy it. But a couple of years ago, we were already doing that. We would pay for Xbox Live, and then on top of that, we would buy games. Back then, it was a little bit cheaper, but I feel like it's the same concept. Hopefully, Xbox can use this feedback and take that feedback into the next generation of Xbox consoles. Maybe that feedback is what we've been hearing on Twitter from these developers saying, oh, well, it sucks developing for the Series S. We can do it, but it just takes more time, and that's not something that we have a lot of in a traditional development cycle. So maybe like that'll be some of the feedback, and they'll say, okay, yeah, we'll kind of make sure that you don't have to develop so many versions of your game just to be on the Xbox platform. I think that could be super helpful. As much as I love the Series S, maybe it will be Game Pass centric. I could see if you're a smaller game, being on Game Pass could be great for you, because it's like, well, not a lot of people are going to buy this game. At least they'll play it through Game Pass. And through that support, maybe we can do other stuff as a studio or as a developer. For these bigger games, it's like, who cares, right? I mean, if you're Game Science and the people behind Black Myth Wukong, and people are like, why isn't your game on Game Pass? It's like, well, I don't need it to be on Game Pass because people love this game and they're buying it. And so you're going to buy it too. Same thing with Grand Theft Auto. So hopefully through, like, maybe it'll be a combination of things, but I do think it is a step in the right direction for Xbox being proactive and reaching out to not only fans, but also developers to say, hey, what can we do better? Now, whether or not they implement that feedback into whatever they're doing, that's a different story. I remember there was a whole thing. They were like, we're reaching out to people to get feedback on our new dashboard. So let us know what you want to see in the new dashboard. And then the new dashboard came out and it was like, wait a minute, hold on. This isn't what we wanted at all. I mean, a little bit, but not too much. So we'll see how it plays out with this other stuff.
Yeah, I know. Like, why would they make the dashboard good when they can put 500 ads on it, It's the same thing as Sony. Charging for internet access, putting ads on the dashboard. It's not like these consoles are free. And even with Game Pass, you're still paying for it. So I don't think you should see ads all the time.
I'm looking at my Xbox dashboard right now. and it's not as bad because it's like an ad for Shattered Space, an ad for Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and then an ad for Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred. At least they're a little bit, the ad tiles are more relevant to me as a gamer and my interest.
That should be relegated to the store page.
Yeah, sure. Like I open up the store and then you kind of suggest to me, hey, some things I would like to pre-download or pre-order or stuff like that.
It's all because of this engagement thing where, you know, they don't want you playing Black Myth Wukong or Silent Hill 2. They want you playing Call of Duty, Apex Legends, Sea of Thieves, games that are going to take up your entire night and have you spending microtransaction money. They like, if you play Silent Hill 2 and then delete it from your PS5 and then don't play for 2 months, they're not getting their coveted engagement.
So they're really good at putting ads on our Xbox dashboard and PlayStation, like Jimmy was talking about at the beginning of the video. But you know what these companies, I guess, are not great at doing, even though they charge us for internet access both on Xbox and on PlayStation and on Nintendo now as well. They were like, why don't we get in on this? Well, they're not good at keeping their servers up because, well, we had another Xbox Live outage, the third or fourth one in as many months, right after PlayStation Network was down. So it's like, you gotta think, like, what is going on, man? Like, why is the service always down? Why do we see a story every other week or every other couple of weeks about people not being able to access their titles, not being able to play games online?
It feels like cyber attacks, honestly. Like, I'm surprised the government hasn't said anything about it, but it was like Verizon went down on Monday for the entire day while my wife was driving back from Chicago, and that's crazy. And then, you know, the PSN went down Monday night, and now Xbox. Like, something weird is going on.
Yeah, it's been a weird couple of months in terms of the reliability of servers, which is pretty, you know,
Not great. It was bad on PlayStation because of their weird authentication shit. Oh, I can't play Space Marine 2 online. I want to play the single player for a little bit. Then you go to play it and it's like, can't verify your license. So you can't even play your downloaded games unless you have them physically. So buy your games on disc so you can actually play them when this continues to happen.
So I don't know. Was it last time I had you on, Jim, when I posed the question, is Bethesda cooked?
I think so. It might have been 2 ago, but I remember talking about it.
A lot of people took issue with that because, well, they just don't like it when I say things like that, I guess. But I am a little worried about Bethesda Game Studios, BGS, the team that works on these RPGs that have become so famous, for better and for worse, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and Starfield, because everyone was looking forward to Shattered Space, the first DLC for Starfield since it launched. And a lot of people were looking to it. I think what, in hindsight, people may have been putting too much pressure on this DLC to really change the game, like at a base level for Starfield. And I think the expectation was, if you didn't like Starfield, well, they're going to add Shattered Space in and suddenly you're going to like it. And it turns out that that is not the case. A lot of the same issues that were apparent in the base game, or a lot of the things, if you played through Starfield and you didn't like something, Shattered Space is not going to fix it. And on the contrary, we have notable YouTubers and content creators coming out and saying, hey, I played through a lot of Starfield despite its flaws. People like Mr. Matty Plays, people like Colt Eastwood, and I played Shattered Space and I don't like it at all. It is not good. And the reviews on both Steam and a little bit on the Xbox store are reflecting that. On Steam, it's like super mixed, maybe like less than favorable reviews. It's like 43% of them are positive. And on the Xbox store, it's like a 3.6 out of 5. Are they going to see the response to this DLC and then just throw in the towel on Starfield, make a PlayStation 5 version to maybe recoup some of their losses? Like, are we worried about Bethesda? It doesn't bring up any questions about any future games that they're going to work on, because Shattered Space is not a home run.
I don't know, man. The timing is so bad for them to not have a Fallout game to coincide with the show. That was weird. People expecting Shattered Space to be the Cyberpunk 2.0 moment, I think we're like setting their expectations way too high. But like, on the other hand, they gave people what they wanted, which was handcrafted areas in the game to explore. And like, it's just so weird. I don't really have an opinion because I fell off of Starfield pretty quick. Just like it's too menu focused, too loading screen heavy. Just didn't really feel right to me. And I know they've added in a lot of stuff like the car and they've improved the performance and everything like that. But I also saw that this expansion has really bad performance on PC and Xbox. So the only thing I guess people can hope for is that they're kind of moving on to Elder Scrolls 6 and they just wanted to get this out because it's the only promised content or for Starfield. I'm just like, I'm past it, you know, like I wasn't expecting this to be this amazing turnaround because I had already kind of like written off Starfield and it would have to be a huge expansion to bring me back, but it really, they've been selling it as a DLC from the beginning. So
I'm not all the way through Shattered Space yet. I've played a good couple, like 3-4 hours. The world is interesting. I do like this shift of, we're going to focus on, we have this new faction, we have this new world, and that's where you're going to be exploring instead of going all around the galaxy. But to me, it just kind of feels like a faction quest almost, like a kind of bonus,
like cut content.
It doesn't feel like, and maybe I'm just spoiled because I played through Shadow of the Erdtree and that was so much freaking content and DLC, and it's apples and oranges because different games and different studios and different production cycles or whatever. I would pay $10-15 for Shattered Space, not the 30 that I paid.
30 is insane. I saw that on Mortismal Gaming's review. I was like, what?
And I did not get a code.
Yeah, no one got a code. No one got a code for this. They didn't send out review copies. It feels like something that should have been out 6 months ago, just for the scale of what it is. They were comparing it to Far Harbor, and from what I've seen, it's nowhere near the level of Far Harbor, which was kind of like a Shadow of the Erdtree style DLC for Fallout 4. I think it's just time to move on from this game personally. Like, they got their player base through Game Pass. It's really fallen off on Steam. Like, the same amount of people are playing it as they are Skyrim. I don't know what you can really do. Is it worth investing in it at this point? Like, is it worth investing in this game to get a bigger player base when everyone just wants Elder Scrolls 6 and a new Fallout?
I mean, yeah, priority should have been, Xbox buys Bethesda. They come in and say, you know what? Make a freaking Fallout game. Focus on Elder Scrolls 6 right now. I know you want to make this space game. I know you want to do like this, and that, but we need you to make another Fallout. We need Elder Scrolls 6 right now. And it's tough because I don't think Starfield is I don't think it's the worst game ever. For me, it doesn't grab me. It doesn't pull me in.
Yeah, and I feel like Starfield would have been a lot better of a scenario if it came out in the era where games took 2 to 3 years to make instead of 5 to 7. It's hard to greenlight new stuff when that's taking the place of the Elder Scrolls or Fallout, right? Like, if you're already on this extended dev cycle, it's like, why even bother with a new IP? Just go with what works. I feel like what we were talking about at the beginning of the video, there needs to be some big revelation where they figure out how to make these games in way less time. It needs to happen. We can't be waiting this long because that's why they're in this situation. It's just, Elder Scrolls is probably 4 or 5 years away still.
Yeah, I would much rather go back to the glory days of like a game comes out, it's awesome. 2 or 3 years later, the sequel comes out. Maybe it's not radically different, but it builds on and improves some things from that first game. And then a couple years later, third game comes out, boom, the trilogy is complete. Like, what happened with that?
But yeah, since we're turning this into like more of a regular gaming podcast, let's talk about Nintendo again, because they're screwing up too. This is really like a deck ready kind of story, I would say, because if you didn't know, there was a Switch emulator called Yuzu, and then there was one called Ryujinx that kind of rose up after Yuzu was taken down, and now Ryujinx has been taken down, and people are unhappy about it because with the emulation, I get why Nintendo's kind of going after it, right? They don't want you to be able to play your Switch games on more powerful hardware because they have more powerful hardware coming with the Switch 2. It makes sense. And they think people are stealing their games. But as it turns out, a lot of people were actually buying Nintendo games and then using like a USB adapter to dump the game to PC and then run it in the emulator on their Steam Deck or their PC. So Nintendo was still getting the money at the end of the day. And it just sucks that every good Switch emulator has been taken down at this point. So we're probably going to have to wait 5 to 6 years for a new one to come out where Nintendo's at a point where they're not going to do anything about it because they're not making Switch 1 games anymore, you know?
It's nasty, man. I mean, from a business perspective, sure, maybe I get it. Maybe I understand. Like, they want to funnel people to their platform and their hardware and to their online store, their digital storefront. But on the other end, it's like, if you're not offering a ton of solutions to the problem that is driving people to emulators and piracy as well, then I don't have any sympathy for you. Nintendo has not only such a loyal fan base, but also a very creative and inventive one as well. They've shown to be pretty damn crafty, and at every point, Nintendo just chooses to them.
Yeah, and like I get it with the MIG switch. If you don't know what that is, it's like a switch cart that you can put a micro SD card in, and it, like, you can run any Switch game off of it that you have dumped to it. That feels a little crazy. I like it. I think it's awesome that you're able to do that. It reminds me of the PSP, but like, just the idea of them striking down every emulator so that there's no way to emulate their games, it feels unnecessary and stupid, because the vast majority of people aren't pirating games. Because if you pirate Nintendo games for the Switch specifically, I mean, you're just asking to have your credit card information stolen, because it's all Russian bot sites and shit like that. Yeah, it just feels like bad timing, because there's no better way to run Switch games. I feel like if the Switch 2 was out, they'd have a much better kind of reason and defense. But yeah, I haven't played a Switch game in forever. I tried Mario Wonder and I was like, this is fine, and I love Astrobot more, but I didn't play Tears of the Kingdom just because I saw how crappy it runs on the Switch hardware, especially after playing on the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally. It's like, the technology's out there and you're not using it.
I will say this kind of gives legitimacy to what Nintendo's saying of like, oh, backwards compatibility, it's going to be a real focus for us with this new generation of hardware that we're going to put out. And also, I will say, like, it's not like the next Switch or the next Nintendo hardware is going to be super powerful. I mean, at most, it's going to be like, what, an Xbox One or a PS4, maybe like it's not even going to be at a 1X or a PS4 Pro level. So it's not going to be like this massive technological jump. Yeah, I wonder how long they can kind of skate on this low-end hardware.
Not long, it seems.
Anyways, guys, that's all the Xbox stuff and gaming stuff we have to talk about today. Thanks so much for joining me for another edition of Xbox Ready. Shout out to Jimmy Champagne for joining us to talk about all of these pressing issues. If you made it this far into the video and you haven't subscribed, why not? Just click that little button. It's super easy. Help me out on my journey to get to 200,000 subs. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.